Greetings and welcome to the Goddess Breath podcast. I'm Dr. Mari Castle and I'm your host. Thank you for listening. Today, I want to talk with you about archetypes and mythology. I know in the last episode, I really covered a lot of different terms and concepts that maybe if you've never been exposed to any of these are brand new to you, or maybe you've heard of mythology and don't really know how it can benefit you, particularly in your personal development. That's what I'm going to go into today. For now, though, I want to start with a breathing technique. This is a this is how I'm going to start these podcasts. It's a little introduction, and then going right into doing a breathing technique, and then more on the content and presentation. And next week, starting right away with Ainana's story. But first, I need to give you the background of what we're really referring to when it comes to our own growth and transformation. But the breath work really is the underlying the base. And I've really experienced so many people, witnessed so many people transforming their life and peeling away layers with breath work, layers of what we cover up. We cover up so much sometimes, our emotions, that we need to just go inward and take a look. And the breathing can help that. Now, the breath work, that's a deeper level, I realize as I say this. Simple breathwork techniques can help us relieve stress, feel more relaxed, and can help us with focus, can help us feel more present, alive, all of these things and beyond. So, I have a really simple breathing technique that I want to share with you right now. And this one is close to my heart because it always reminds me of my mother who struggled with COPD about the last 10 years of her life. And I was one of her main uh, caretakers. And I would always notice I would not always notice, I noticed when she would be struggling with getting enough oxygen. And I would do this breathing technique with her. It's super simple. It's breathing in through the double nostrils and breathing out through pursed lips. And the reason for with my mother is she had the calendula on the oxygen to get the oxygen, and so she had to breathe in through the nose. That's what it looks like if you're watching the video. If you're just listening, breathing in through the nostrils and blowing out through your mouth with pursed lips. It's called breathe in the flower because you can imagine breathing in the scent of the flower, and that makes you want to when you breathe when you here's a flower that you take that breath and you're getting the scent, and then blowing out the candle, you're blowing out a little more exerted when you're blowing out the candle. So I would use this with my mom because it would give her a visual, and then she knew to, uh, you know, take that inhale, like nice deep inhale, and then we're going to bring that inhale down into our lower abdominal area. So we can go ahead and start. I'm going to do a couple of rounds with you. Uh, it's just on a count of three. We'll go ahead and do it together. And you can do this pretty much anywhere. So you don't have to worry if you are anywhere particularly that it might interfere. It's something you can do standing. You can even do it driving in the car, not with your eyes closed, obviously, but then you wouldn't You can do it when you're in a meeting. Probably people wouldn't even notice unless you're really exerting that external breath, and kind of exaggerating the inhale and the exhale. But it's something that you could do a little more subtle too. I'm just offering this because it's a great tool that you can have available at any point in time. Now we'll count to three, or I will count to three. 1, 2, 3, and exhale. Inhale and exhale through pursed lips, like you're blowing out the candle. You inhale, take that deep breath. You're really bringing that breath up into your nostrils, up, way up deep, and then exhaling, exhaling all the way. Breathing in, take a little deeper breath, and then exhaling all the way. Nice long exhale. This is going to prepare us for some other breath techniques coming soon. Inhale, breathe in the flower. Exhale, blow out the candle. 2 more times. Inhale, breathe in the flower. Exhale, blow out the candle. And then a nice sigh is always helpful to let your body relax, to feel more calm, centered, and present. Thank you for doing that with me. And again, that's just a nice reminder to realize that you can do these types of techniques throughout the day. This particular one doesn't have any specific protocol where you need to be concerned that you're going to fall asleep or something, or be so relaxed you can't work, that sort of thing. Now, let's jump into archetypes and mythology. Like I said, I feel like everybody's heard of mythology, just maybe not understanding what it benefits you from a personal development perspective. Um, Archetypes probably are maybe not so familiar. I've talked to a lot of people that they want to know more about archetypes. They've heard of the term archetypes and want to understand a little bit more. What I've decided to do is bring you through this description of archetypes and mythology based on my PowerPoint that I created for my course, The Power of Myth and Archetype. This course, most recently, I did back in November of 2023. It's scheduled for March 27th, 2025. If you're interested, this is going to give you a quick overview, a snippet, because we're going to go quickly. The course sessions are 2 hours long for 4 weeks. And this I'm going to do pretty quickly, so bear with me on this, and I'm going to get the PowerPoint up, and hopefully it will come right to where I need to be. And let's see, you can see that, looks like. All right. Now, here's the title of the course, The Power of Myth and Archetype. This is class 1. Just jumping ahead because I talk about what the purpose of the course is. But what I want to mention here on this slide, archetypal energy and mythology is a part of our collective consciousness. It's images, symbols, and metaphors that can emerge and trigger our psyche at any time. And we could think of dreams when we think of archetypes, how dreams have certain symbols, or we try to analyze dreams. Now, Carl Gustav Jung is the famous Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who he founded analytical psychology, but he also made archetypes popular, more awareness around archetypes. He created uh, uh, the description behind it and really deepened into the use of archetypes with therapy. Uh, that's why I want to say myth and archetypes are a therapeutical tool for self growth and for psychotherapy. Now, the term, the word is a Greek word or derived from the Greek language. Arche means first molded, origin, primal source principle. Type is character, imprint, an image, pattern. So this is the idea combining these two and recognizing that the archetypes are a part of our internal processes, are in our consciousness, whether we recognize it or not, and really are across the full spectrum, can be anything that really comes into our field of awareness that is brings meaning to us. And it can also be something that we recognize, relate to outside of ourselves, that helps us with mirroring or understanding more about ourselves related to personal development. According to the understanding that has emerged from Jungian psychology, Carl Jung's psychology, scholarly mythological research, and modern consciousness research, archetypes are primordial images imprinted in our psyche for meaning. They are timeless of the material world. Go back to ancient wisdom. And I'll just give you a little glimpse of today's world is, say, Disney. Think of Disney World and all of the characters. This is something that our children are growing up with. I mean, Disney's been around for a while, obviously not since ancient times, but that we do have um, these ideas when we see different characters in Disney, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse. What does that mean to you? I'll talk about more about that with different archetypes. And that they represent universal patterns and themes that reside deep within our human psyche. They transcend individual experiences because they're collective. People relate to them. Every culture has their own specific types of archetypes. And then also how it creates an emotional response in us. And I want to just talk about that archetypes exist in the abstract realm of the collective unconsciousness. And these images are symbolic representations that give form and substance to the underlying principle itself. So, like I said, through dreams, myths that we're going to be covering in this podcast. In the next few episodes, we're going to get into Ainana's myth, fairy tales, like I said, Disney you could think of, but there's also a lot of ancient fairy tales that people have drawn a lot of analysis from in their own development. And then cultural narratives, and that relates to us and our psyche, and they're concrete and tangible manifestations that adapt and change with cultural context. So think of Disney World and the characters in Disney as a great example of that. So just jumping ahead, just a couple of examples. Ancestor is an archetype. I talk about Ainana. We'll talk about Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, in the next few episodes. The shaman is an archetype, the great mother, the wise old man. We could think of sage, a ruler, a lover, magician, tyrant. Animals are like, we think of the serpent. What does the serpent mean to you? Every culture or based on your upbringing has a perspective on the serpent. And the butterfly, what does the butterfly represent? I have the butterfly on my rug back here that I got from Greece. And the butterfly means freedom, but it also means metamorphosis. Then we think of nature, the elements, earth, air, water. These all, when we think of them, have a meaning in our mind, symbolic understanding. um, Nature, we think of the tornado or we use the phrase being in a whirlwind. So I hope that helps you get an idea. Also, we can utilize the planets. That's a whole nother thing. It's called archetypal astrology. But when you think of Venus or you think of the moon, what does that mean to you? That's kind of the idea. Jumping ahead in this slideshow, now, to go right into mythology and talk about mythology. And Joseph Campbell, for me, I've learned the most about mythology from him. He was a mythologist and he studied and wrote many books on all different cultural mythology. I love his main phrases. He really talks about the fact that myths provide clues to our spiritual potential. So, this is how we can learn more and glean from the aspects of mythology. And he says people say that what we're all seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonance within our own innermost being and reality, so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive. I just love that. So myths are psychologically symbolic. Again, that's similar to archetypes. They could be a sacred story that reflects and reinforces a cultural worldview, and it can explain where everything we know comes from, why we're here, where we're going. Some people think myths aren't true. That's your personal opinion. I won't go into that. And they're characterized uh, with a particular deity or a ruler or character, somebody, a mainstay person that we are using as an archetype to learn more about our own character and to grow from, to learn from Jesus about compassion and love, forgiveness, things like that. And there's a lot about myth that, like I said, I don't want to go into. But I want to say the mystical function is the primary function of myth. The defining aspect is the communication of the mystical insight or collective wisdom that has been gained on the journey. And Joseph Campbell talks about one of his main books is The Hero's Journey. And then he talks about how that looks. There's a whole diagram that you can look up, do a Google search. I have it in this course. I'm going to just stop here because I feel like that's good enough to give you an understanding of what mythology and archetypes are about. So, just to recap, main point for archetypes is that it's experiencing some image, form, or character outside of yourself to relate to what is happening within. And myths are clues to our spiritual potential and personal development. If you don't think of yourself as a spiritual person, then it's about self growth. And also, that leads to empowerment and to feeling more whole. Now, I want to just mention Ainana as an archetype since that's the main theme of this podcast, but also a few other archetypes that are in her story. And Ainana, from 5,000 years ago, had she left her legacy as Queen of Heaven and Earth. And she's also titled Goddess of Love and War. So she has this sort of wide spectrum that includes the paradox. Heaven and earth are opposites. Love and war are opposites. So she holds the container for the paradoxical spectrum that is basically the yin and the yang. And there then is a lot more to that. We can go into the Tao Te Ching. We can talk about the philosophies of Chinese medicine, which has to do with the yin and the yang. But non-duality is also another concept that holds the opposites together, the masculine and feminine energies, which we're going to also cover in another episode. And her archetypal configuration is basically the great mother, because she really loved humanity. And as I go into the story, I'll tell you more. I feel like I'm explaining things maybe a little earlier than I should be if I go into too much. So, because I have the story in me and it's easy for me to just talk a lot about all of it. But that she really cared for humanity. And the next episode, next time you listen in, I will be starting the episode with her story. And I'm excited about that. So in her story, she has various counterparts that are her brother, King Gilgamesh. He's not king in the beginning of the story, just like Inanna isn't queen of heaven and earth in the beginning of the story. She starts out as a maiden. He starts out as the valiant hero as they come together. And then also, Inanna has her father, the god of wisdom, who helps her return from the underworld. And then we have the tyrant king, who we discover is later on, it's like the very seeding of the patriarchal era. And there's a lot to say about that too. So I, again, have to refrain from jumping ahead of myself. So I hope that helps give you some framework for what we're going to talk about, and understanding a little bit more about what an archetype is and how having an archetype in your life, or knowing that all of these various symbols can have an effect on you, and then how you want that effect. So for me, with Inanna, I didn't know who she was. I discover her in my holotropic breathwork session. Then I look into more and find out her story. And as I'm piecing apart her story and reading through the book, which is titled Inanna, Queen of Heaven and Earth by Samuel Noah Kramer, who was the Sumerian scholar and researcher, that I was relating to some of the parts of her story that I felt were happening in my life. And then it gave me a mirror to say, oh, how am I reacting to this particular situation? How am I showing up? Am I showing up as a healthy person with, that's clear-minded, or am I showing up reactive and or disappointed, or any variation of emotion? And then I go into more of how all of this, specifically her story in detail, has affected me. And I feel that she has a great representation, like other spiritual deities. We can think of Buddha, Jesus. There's all these different gods and goddesses in the Hindu culture, and all different religious cultures. So it just is endless, really. But everybody, if they have their own particular archetype, can really benefit from having some sort of guidance to be more of a, I feel like everybody wants to be the best they can be. Everybody wants to reach their full potential for the most part. I know maybe not everybody. I'm just saying, for the most part, that's part of our human growth to really better ourselves, to be a better person, to be supportive, to be compassionate. And this is how archetypes and mythology can help us. So I'm going to close here, but just give you a little recap of the next episode. I'm going to start with a breathing technique. It'll be a grounding breath. And then I'm going to introduce you to Ainana's story, the first segment. And I'm going to talk about energy healing, particularly the chakra energy. These are energy discs that are in the body. And then from there, I will share with you how I related her story, each part of her story, to the energy centers in our body and how that can help us with healing, transformation, and growth. So thank you for listening, and I will see you or catch up with you in the next episode.